Zman Simchatenu. A joyous time. Last night, in the land of Israel, families were enjoying a Zman Simchatenu. It was Simchas Torah. Families were in the streets doing hakafot, dancing with the Torahs, children, grandchildren, young and old. This morning, those same families in bomb shelters, locked in their homes, not knowing if a terrorist is going door to door, looking to kill a Jew and looking to kill an Israeli. It's jarring to even say these words from the Bima, because they're not just words, but it's reality, as you all saw just as long as with me. Israel is at war. You know, the prayer for the soldiers of Israel, it says that we should be protected by land, by sea, and by air. And what happened last night? We were attacked by land, by sea, and by air. Not military posts, civilians, families, young and old. By the time I say these words, and I walked in the sanctuary this morning, it's probably old numbers by now. But at about 8 a.m., these were the numbers. 3,000 rockets in 10 hours. Over 100 terrorists infiltrating into Israeli cities of Israel proper. And at the time of this service, when we began, over 100 Israelis dead and 900 injured. At the time of the service that began, confirmed that both military and civilians are being held in Gaza as hostages. Magen David Adom ambulances, one that just sat outside of our sanctuary a couple of months ago as children climbed in and saw the beauty that Israel does to save people, stolen and gone into Gaza. You saw the pictures just like me. IDF vehicles, no longer in the land of Israel, not driven by Israeli soldiers, but driven by Gazans into that area. Full transparency from a rabbi here at Sinai Temple, usually we do not use our phones on Shabbat. Not to check email and not to call anybody. But it was different this time. Pikuach nefesh doche et haShabbat. To save a life, you override the prohibitions of the Sabbath day. And so as news traveled very quickly, beginning at about 10 p.m. our time in LA, you were watching this frame by frame, cell phone picture by cell phone picture. It was a must. We couldn't wait till the end of this holiday, but we had to reach out. Just last week on Yom Kippur, in the middle of the day, most of you, maybe some of you were here, but after the sermon, as you know, this place empties out for a couple of hours. But we have the martyrology service. We remember the martyrs of Jewish history stretching all the way back to the Rabbi Akiva through today. And this year, because it was the 50th commemoration of the Yom Kippur War, I decided to add just a small paragraph commemorating that day. But as you know, Yom Kippur changes in the secular calendar, and the real 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur in the Gregorian calendar was when? Yesterday. And at that service, I asked the cantor to sing the song, HaMilchama HaAcharona. It was sung after the Yom Kippur War by Yeharom Gaon. Ani mavtiach lach, yalda sheli ktana. Shezo tihiyeh hamilchama acharona. The words in English, I am certain for you, little girl, that this will be the last war. I just celebrated my 41st birthday. But I always ask people older than me, who are older than 50, what was it like to sit in a synagogue 50 years ago and know that the state of Israel was under attack on Yom Kippur? What was it like? What were the rabbis saying, and what were you thinking, and what were you doing? And actually this year, I even spoke to a few members of Sinai who were in this sanctuary at that time. I don't have to ask that question anymore. As we witness the horror of our brothers and sisters thousands of miles away, watching this like it's a reality TV show, but it's a horror film. This is our family. And so in the middle of the night last night, I reached out to Howard Lesner, our former executive director who retired just a couple of years ago. As Yom Kippur ended, he stood right here and he gave Rabbi Guzik and I a hug and he said, I'll see you in about a couple months. Michal and I are going to enjoy our time in Israel. I want to read with you some of what he wrote to me in the middle of the night. He said this. First, he said, please feel free to share. It's obviously different hearing about it from somebody here rather than reading it or seeing it on the news. Howard's words. We got woken up to the sirens and we dashed into our shelter. We heard a lot of booms overhead and some close enough to shake our house. The crazy part is they have infiltrated into Israel, and the terrorists are driving through the streets in trucks, shooting at police and citizens. This has caught all of Israel off guard. They got in by sea in hand gliders. We're safe. Excuse my language, but he writes, it's pretty damn scary. A couple of hours later, I checked in with Howard again, and he said this. I just got notified they have infiltrated here in Ashdod. That's where Howard and Michal are. We've been told to lock ourselves in our house and stay off the streets. We're hearing police and ambulance sirens. Terrorists driving through the streets. Not sure the status of how many infiltrated, but what we're seeing in videos, there are multiple trucks filled with terrorists. It's Shabbat, Howard says, and so the roads are pretty open for them to go deeper into the country. A few hours later, just got word that the terrorists took over the police station in Sderot. There's now a full call-up of all soldiers. The country is being told to prepare for a long confrontation. And the last communication that Howard had with me, he wrote this. He said, we were supposed to be visiting Michal's best friend at her kibbutz this weekend. The kibbutz is on the Gaza border. We just got a text from her that she and her husband are locked in their ma'amad, the safe room, and there are 3 armed terrorists inside their home. Had we gone to visit, we'd be locked up with them. This is totally surreal. The kibbutz has been overrun with Hamas terrorists. He wrote, thank God for the ma'amad, the safe rooms that the kibbutz built for each home years ago. The problem, Howard said, is they have little or no food in the room, nor a bathroom, and they can be locked in for hours or even days. And as I walked into the sanctuary, he sent me one more. Having dinner in the dark. We've been told to stay inside, no lights, and be vigilant. It's been a long day, and I'm sure we're in for more long days. The death toll keeps rising. It's over 100 murdered, 4 helicopters shot down. We will be sleeping with one eye open and listening for any siren warning to run to the shelter. Howard concluded, we're safe. We're thankful. Shabbat shalom to my Sinai family. In 2019, I visited the kibbutz of Kfar Aza. Same thing, right on the border. You can literally look in to Gaza. And I met a woman named Michal. And Michal showed us the toys that were falling in her backyard. And by toys, I mean kites, but by kites, I mean incendiary kites. Kites that are meant to be lit in fire and to torture the people on the other side. Michal then showed us a board game. It looked like Chutes and Ladders. You've probably played that game before with your children. But it was called Makom Bituach. It means a safe place. It was to help children in bomb shelters keep their minds off what was happening outside, to keep their mental health sane just for a few moments. And just a few months ago, as I explained on Rosh Hashanah, I was in Israel with rabbinical students, and we visited that same area in Gaza, this time in the Eshkol region, and we went to an unbelievable place called Groove Tech. It was an innovation lab, but the entire building was an innovation lab. But it wasn't simply to do innovation. It was to make sure that when a siren went off, the children that were outside that day in June, because it was a beautiful sunny day, if they hear a siren, they can come into a fortified place and play a video game just like my kids play after school, and have a cooking demo, and for once in their life, live a normal life. When we were there, that building was empty because the kids were outside playing. But today, I can only imagine, that building is full. Every single rabbi that I know this high holidays gave a sermon about Israel. We pretended to be political analysts and tell you the challenges that the state of Israel was facing in the Knesset and right and left and center and different reforms. You like them, you don't like them. But today is a different story. There is no division, because today, while Israel is at war, it's a time for unity. The threat that reservists would not show up didn't happen. Reservists are showing up for their units, and because they are, we must show up too. This was not the planned sermon for Ziegler. It wasn't the planned sermon last week. It wasn't the planned sermon yesterday. It wasn't even the planned sermon 12 hours ago. But it needed to be said. In a few moments, we're going to have our Ziegler prayers, and we have our personal prayers. And if we read the actual text that the rabbis put in the personal Ziegler prayers, Nodev tzedakah. It says when we remember our loved ones, we should give tzedakah. And this morning, we'll have our personal prayers for our loved ones that we are here for. Those loved ones that we lit that Yortzeit candle last night for. But today, each one of us is going to add 100 more names. Names that we do not know. Faces that we have never seen. Hearts and souls that wanted a Zman Simchatenu like we're going to have tonight. Adults and children that wanted to do like what we were doing right now. Sitting in a Beit Knesset, sitting in a synagogue, but instead, they're preparing for funerals, and the rest of their lives have been transformed. Yes, we lit a Yortzeit candle last night, and in a few moments, we're going to say the words of the mourner's Kaddish. But this morning, unlike any other Ziegler that we've ever had here, Nodev tzedakah, we're going to ask you to donate. To donate for Ziegler, for the people of Israel, for the state of Israel, and for every single fellow Jew that needs us. We at Sinai Temple have done this before. During the Second Intifada, as Rabbi Wolpe stood here and literally delivered, back in those days, they were checks to the state of Israel. But this morning, in consultation with the Jewish Federations of North America and the Los Angeles Greater Federation, we are going to ask you to donate to the Fund for Victims of Terror, which is often the first responder in the recovery process of families and individuals who have been impacted by acts of terror and violence, providing immediate grants to assist victims within 48 hours. And this fund also provides long-term rehab to provide post-trauma care. There are several hundred of us here, and there's more people that are at home as well. On the screen, I believe you will see a link. But after this service, and again, it is not a normal time, we will be sending an email later today, even before Yom Tov ends, to show that what we can do. Yesterday, we had Hoshana Rabbah. It's a very long service, and there were only about 15 of us there. In a long service, just like you, I bring a book too. And so I took this book off my shelf by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. It's called Israel. And I was just skimming through it, and then I got to this point, And when I saw what happened in the world these last 24 hours, I share with you the timeless message of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who walked that land of Israel in 1967. Heschel, a Holocaust survivor himself, explains that the wall, the kotel, heard the words of our prophets, heard the words of our rabbis, heard the words of so many people when we could not be there, and explains that we too can share our words with that wall. And so he writes, community. Community means community of concern, sharing joy as well as anxiety. At that moment of crisis, he writes, it is good to witness a community of concern. He said the state may be thousands of miles away, and he was in New York, not in LA, but the care we feel is intimate and strong. For Heschel says, wherever a human being is harmed, we all hurt. Zman simchatenu. Today was supposed to be a day of joy. But today, we all hurt. Today, we as a Jewish community, as B'nai Yisrael, as children of Israel, we are all part of that community of concern. We all hurt. And so today, let's show up. Let's make a difference. Let's remember those lives that were lost over these last number of hours. For during this Yizkor service, they need us. We need each other. Yehi zichron baruch. May the memory of the children of Israel be a blessing for all time. Am Yisrael Chai. Let us say, Amen. We begin our Yizkor service. Cantor Sugarman chants Psalm 23.